Okay class, today we're going to learn about adding and subtracting fractions.
Fractions? This teacher got me messed up if she thinks I'm about to add and subtract fractions because I am not about that fractions life.
I hate fractions.
If you feel the way that my students do about adding and subtracting fractions, then you need to watch this video and it will help you know how, why, and what to look out for when working with fractions. Okay, today we're going to learn how to add and subtract fractions with like and unlike denominators. But first, let's review. We know that in fractions, you have a numerator and a denominator.
Here we have Margot and Shane. They want to share a pizza that has 5 slices. Margot eats 3/5 of the pizza and Shane eats 1/5. Because we have common denominators, we can add straight across to show that they ate 4/5 of the total pizza. Common denominators are the easiest forms when adding and subtracting fractions. If we want to use them for things like recipes or distance or even splitting up a pizza evenly between 2 people.
When you're subtracting fractions that have like denominators, it's the same concept as adding, which means you have the like denominators so you don't have to really worry about them. You just subtract across the top. In this problem, we have 2/3 minus 1/3, which means we're working with an object that is made up of 3 parts. Here you see that you have 2/3, and then if we took away one of these thirds, we're left with only one shaded in, which means we have 1/3. So overall, we just did 2 minus 1 equals 1 and left it over 3.
Now we're going to talk about adding unlike denominators. So here we're going to consider the problem where you have 1/3 of a piece of fabric and your friend has 3/4 of a piece of fabric. You want to make a shirt, so we need to find out how much fabric you have all together. To do that, we see that we have different like parts. So we want to try to find the same like part. So over here, we have a hole. You have 1/3 of that hole, and your friend has 3/4 of a hole. Now we want to try to find a common denominator, but we see that we have different size parts. One way to find a common denominator is to multiply the whole fraction by the opposite denominator. We're going to take 1 times 4 over 3 times 4. So we have our fraction and we have our opposite denominator. And we're going to do the same thing for our other fraction. So we're going to add, and then we're going to do 3 times 3 over 4 times 3. So we have our fraction and our opposite denominator. 1 times 4 is 4. 3 times 4 is 12. And then we add 3 times 3 is 9 over 4 times 3 is 12. Now we have a common denominator. So with our common denominator, we can split our whole into 12 different parts. When we add this, though, we get 13/12. So in this picture, we see that we have an extra 12. So what you had, which was originally 1/3, is really equal to 4/12. And what your friend has, which was originally 3/4, is the same thing as saying 9/12. So when we add all that up, we get our 13/12.
When you're subtracting fractions with unlike denominators, one way you can work with them is finding a least common denominator. Now, we see that we have the problem 5/6 minus 1/4. Our two fractions are made up of 2 different parts, 5/6 being in 6 and 1/4 being in 4ths. Now, we're going to look, and one way we can find a common denominator is by finding the least common multiple. Here, we take our 2 denominators, 6 and 4, and list out multiples until we find one that matches. Here, we have 12, which is 6 times 2 and 4 times 3, and it's the first number that these two have in common. Now, we're going to use 12 as our least common denominator. Now that we found 12 as our least common multiple, we're going to use it to solve the problem. Okay, since we found that 6 times 2 equals 12, we're going to take our original fraction of 5/6 and multiply it by 2. Since 4 times 3 equals 12, we're going to take 1/4 and multiply it by 3. Here, we see we did that, and we get 10/12 minus 3/12 equals 7/12. This gives us our answer in the simplest form. Another way to find a common denominator is to multiply the two denominators in any order. You see that 6 times 4 equals 24. When you list out the multiples, you still see 12 as our least common multiple, but you see 24 is another one that we get when we multiply the denominators. Now, we solve the problem the same one, 5/6 minus 1/4, in the same way by just multiplying by the opposite denominator. Okay, after we multiply the entire fraction by the opposite denominator, you see that we get 14/24. And this is the correct answer for 5/6 minus 1/4, but it's not in the most simple form.
Now we're going to look at what to look out for when we're adding and subtracting fractions or things that are of different wholes. So in our example, we see that we have 3 baseballs and 2 cherries. So when we add them, we can't say that we have 5 baseballs altogether because we don't. We have 3 and we have 2 cherries. So when we add, we say we have 3 plus 2 equals 5 objects in total. For fractions, what we need to look out for is the different sizes of our objects. So right here we see that we have a small pizza, and right here we see that we have a large pizza. So we have 2/3 of this small pizza and 3/4 of this larger pizza. So when we're working with 2 different wholes, we can only say that we have 2 portions of pizza because they are not of the same pizza. I know that you would probably get confused because you would find your common denominator and see that 8/12 plus 9/12 equals 17/12. But this means that it's of one whole. So we do not want to do that.
All right, so let's review a few things we learned from the video.
I want to compliment people, but them girls actually kind of made adding, subtracting fractions kind of easy.
And we'll keep on